right, welcome in to the Questionable Podcast. I'm Meko here with Gionne. What's up, man?
Not much. How are you? I'm just fresh off the Hard Knocks viewing. So
Same. I didn't think it would be possible for me to get any more excited, but like, we're gonna get into all of that today in today's episode. We're obviously gonna talk Hard Knocks. We're gonna have a couple conversations about some injury news that came through with the Lions. There's some big news in the division, courtesy of the Chicago Bears. And then we actually have a preseason game this week. So Gian and I are going to dive into that, give our predictions of what we're excited to see and what we expect to kind of play out in this game and what we're going to be focused on. But if you are new to the Questionable Podcast, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really do appreciate that. We're trying to grow this following little by little. So any love that you can give us is always appreciated. Also, we actually have a website called questionabletees.com where you can get cool t-shirts like this, like the hat that Gionne has. If you've watched any of our podcasts before and you've seen any of the other t-shirts that we've probably worn on this show, all of that stuff can be found on questionabletees.com. So be sure to head over there and show us a little bit of support.
yeah, just go. Just go.
Just go.
Just head over there.
There's a link in the description. Feel free to click it. Browse a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, for those of you guys who haven't been, or for those of you who normally watch the show, you guys will have noticed that like I'm finally back from vacation. So that's been
yeah. How was it?
Shows. It was great, aside from the COVID that I got on the way back. But but no, it was awesome. You guys know this, you and Scotty know, like I always enjoy the time with my family. So being able to spend a full 10 days, no work, no outside distractions, just being able to focus on the wife, the kids. My sister came with us, which is always a huge help to have an extra pair of eyes on these kids and an extra person to entertain a 10 and a 5-year-old. So
yeah,
trip was great. We did Magic Kingdom one day, we did Universal Studios on a separate day. That was always fun. Got to ride plenty of rides, got to eat some amazing food. I got to try, so we drove, which sucked. Do not do that. If you ever want to go to Florida, don't drive. It is not like, it's an experience. It's fine to do it like maybe once in a lifetime. The drive down is fine. The drive back is a nightmare. So I would never, ever do that again. But couple cool things from the trip on the drive down. So like once you get so far south, I'm going to say Georgia because this is the first time I saw one. If you live in the South and you know that this place is in other parts of the South before Georgia, feel free to say so in the comments. But there's a gas station called Buc-ee's. This is the god of all gas stations, Gionne. It is the most amazing gas station that I have ever come across in all my travels. First of all, it's a gas station, so you can get gas there. But it's basically like a mini Target.
What?
Like, it has so much cool stuff inside. First of all, it's the South. They're selling smokers outside of this gas station.
Yes, love it.
Like full size, like $1,700 smokers. And I'm just like, oh, this is so amazing. And if I could buy one, I would buy one right now because I need a new smoker. People inside are so nice. If you've ever been to Chick-fil-A, you realize how excited they are to greet you when you come to Chick-fil-A. It was the same thing at this gas station. People are like, oh, welcome to Buc-ee's. It's so nice to have you here. And I was just like, I do. I feel so welcome. Thank you. Cleanest bathrooms I've ever been in. If you've ever been on a road trip, one of the worst things that you have to deal with on a road trip is dirty bathrooms. Not at Buc-ee's. You get like your own like private stall. It's so intimate and just secluded and just spotless. Wow. But the best part for me was they have these brisket sandwiches. And I know you're vegan, but allow me to just oh my God.
I wasn't always, and smoked brisket was one of my favorites.
Dude, I can't even explain to you like the depths of my soul that this sandwich touched. Like, again, if you've ever been on a road trip, if you've ever even gotten food from a gas station whether like making a sober decision or not, like gas station food is like a toss up. Like maybe you'll get something good or maybe you'll like regret it in like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Not at Bucky's. The best. Like you can see them cutting the brisket. It was so tender, so juicy. Like second best sandwich I had on this trip. The
Okay.
first,
Well, we'll get Scott involved. We'll see if we'll reach out to Bucky's and see if they'll sponsor a few shows. This
listen,
sounds like a ringing endorsement.
I would happily sing their
See if
praises
they
for
can-
the rest of my days.
or maybe they'll just send us a couple sandwiches.
That too,
And if
please.
if that's all they do, then that's great.
I will happily accept them on the behalf of Gionne
Yeah.
because he won't eat those.
Yeah,
So
you can have mine.
send me his.
Yeah, you can have mine.
But the sandwich that you would have loved was actually that we also
Mhm.
got in Georgia and Atlanta. So I mentioned before I went on vacation that we were stopping at this place called the Slutty Vegan. First time I've ever had anything vegan. First of all, you were right. Not focusing on the texture was the right thing to do because this sandwich or this burger was amazing.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you can definitely tell after a couple bites, like, okay, this is not like ground beef or anything like that. Didn't matter. It was still
Mhm.
delicious. It had vegan bacon, which I don't even care what that's supposed to be. I know
Yeah.
it wasn't bacon, but it's still just like one of the best burgers I've ever had in my life. Now, I'm not
Wow.
gonna go
Okay.
vegan, not
Yeah.
going vegan, but it is something. It has at least piqued my interest enough to where if you came into town, you were like, "Hey, Miko, let's go to this vegan restaurant." I'm not gonna scoff at you. I'd be like, "Let's go,
Yes.
let's go try it out,"
Yes.
because that was my first vegan experience, and it was amazing. One low light that I'll have from the trip, and then we can jump into Hard Knocks. Uh, it's Disney. You're dealing with kids, you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with heat. Public service announcement to parents, because this is I'm not even gonna get on children because they're children.
Yeah.
It's a two-parter for parents. If you are going to take your children to an amusement park of any kind, there are two things that I feel like you absolutely have to be able to do. The first is to make sure that they're well behaved. Like just plain and simple. Nobody wants to deal with your screaming children. Like they don't. And I have a 10 and a 5-year-old. And like to say that my children, like they make me feel like I'm a better parent than I was because my children didn't throw tantrums. They didn't complain. They weren't being fussy because they couldn't get something or because they couldn't get on a ride. But I saw all of those things from other
Mhm.
parents. And you try not to judge. You try not to be like, but like it's hard when you're in a line for like an hour and a half and little Timmy is like just going crazy and decides to just cock back and hit his mom. And you're just like, oh, do you want me to step in? Because I will happily, I will happily discipline your child on your behalf.
I will do the work that you have clearly not been doing.
Right. Free of charge.
Yeah. Well, maybe a
So
Bucky
that's
sandwich, but
right. That's part A of that. But the second part is also, and it's again, it's part of being a parent. I'm a little paranoid these days. Because I've become more aware of like what happens in the world. You just naturally become that way as a parent. Dude, if you're gonna take your kids should be like within like visible sight of you at all times, either like in front of you or next to you with you like clasping onto them. The number of parents that I saw that were just like booking it to like either an exit or to an event or a ride or whatever and not paying any attention to their children was
oh my
terrifying.
god. Oh
Like
man.
absolutely terrifying. And it's just like, people wonder how children get kidnapped or how certain, bad things happen in the world where children go missing. This is how, because you just refuse to like prioritize them. Like, again, I'm not by any means the perfect parent, but when I tell you my 5-year-old was either in the stroller or holding one of the three adults' hands, and my 10-year-old was like either next to me or like in front of me, like I need to be able to see you at all times. Those were like the two lowlights of the trip where you're just like it teetered between annoying and then just like borderline terrified.
Yeah, boy, I hear that. It's been a long time since, like, I've been to Six Flags. I took Rachel. We went to Six Flags a while back for her birthday, a few years back. But we went on, like, it was like a Tuesday during the school
Yeah.
year, and like purposefully, like she took the day off work, and it was great because it was very, like, there was almost no one there. So I have not been to an amusement park at peak hours probably since I was a kid. So I have not experienced this
Yeah.
yet.
It's a different thing when you I feel like it is a different thing when you have kids. Like I've been to Disney plenty of times with like when I was younger, and so like I know I wasn't as cognizant of these things. But when you have children, you're just like you're very like sensitive to how other children behave and how other people like keep an eye on their children. And when like if you see like anything that looks like substandard to you, like it just triggers something inside of you where you're just like, I don't want to be that person that says something, but I really want to say something.
Yeah.
But enough about my trip, Gian. We gotta talk Hard Knocks. It is going to be the
Yes.
talk of the town. Um, why don't you kick us off? What was your thoughts of Hard Knocks? Like biggest takeaways, impressions? Like just go. Tell me.
Well, a few weeks ago, maybe it was even last week, we made prediction as to who was going to be the standout, and we were saying Jamal Williams, who he certainly popped, but I don't think any of us predicted Deuce Staley was going to be the presence that he was, and the intensity, the personality, just the biggest takeaway for me was the friendship, camaraderie, rivalry between him and Aaron Glenn. Seeing them jawing at each other was absolutely incredible. When Deuce straight up said, "You're not writing anything down," so that's like you're not actually writing anything. Stop. And then when he was like, "Oh, good for you! You blew up a screenplay. You blew up a screen pass." Just kept repeating it, and just, I mean, it was like. And then Aaron Glenn said, "Just the former player comes out." And it just, you step onto that field and the competitor emerges, and that to me was the most fun to see. The players are the players; they're fighting for spots. Dan Campbell had a great breakdown in the early in the episode about some of you are veterans, are playing for minutes, and other people are playing for, moving up in the depth chart, and some of you are playing for a
Mhm.
spot on the roster. He said it much better than that, but I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. I never really thought about it like that. And that was just a great way to think about it. Also, um, Jamal Williams' speech, the Dan Campbell moment about we'll play you in a landfill, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That was a snippet of a much longer speech, and the longer speech was absolutely amazing. And I loved hearing the non-bleeped version. It was great.
Yeah.
And that was another thing that stood out to me about Aaron Glenn. He seems like the most poised, collected individual. And then to see him out on the field running around, screaming and dropping F bombs and cussing, I was like, oh, this is like literally like a Jekyll and Hyde. It's like that. So anyway, how about
That's
you? What were
but
your
I was gonna say, like, to that point, like, I felt that way about the entire coaching staff. Like, these guys,
mm,
you wanna talk about professionals, like, in front of a camera, like, these guys clearly know how to flip that switch once they get on the field, right?
yes.
Dan is like, to think that Dan Campbell to describe Dan Campbell as well put together in a press conference after his first press conference seems like a little crazy to say, but, like, in comparison to what he looked like on that practice field, is just like night and day. Like the dude flips a switch the minute he goes into coaching mode, and like his coaches follow suit. They all know how to flip that switch to where it's all business now. It's all about execution. It's all about effort. And the minute they see like a glimpse of it, like they seem to like have like a zero tolerance for it. Right. Like I
Oh
think
yeah.
like to your point, like after Dan's initial speech in the beginning of the episode, which I loved. Like as you, same as you, I really enjoyed like the full version of that because it was just it's more build up. Like it built so much better when you see where he started and where he ended. And you kind of see why, Jessica Minda is just like eyes focused on him that entire time because it is such
Yeah.
like it is one of those speeches that has you ready to run through a brick wall. But I think it's like right after the intro and it's like the first practice and it's like he's like yelling at the sound guy like to cut the music off and he's like ripping into the team and it's just like holy crap, we don't ever see this Dan Campbell.
Yes. Yeah.
Even after losses, like Dan never is like unhinged after a loss. Like last season, they had some tough losses, some disappointing losses, and we've seen him emotional, but like never angry. And it's like to see
Yes.
him frustrated and like agitated with effort was just a cool thing. And I think that was probably my biggest takeaway. In addition to everything you said, like to see a more 360 view of Dan Campbell and not in a goofy way. Because I think a lot of people have been excited to see that. Like, oh, is he going to say something else that's really crazy or something out of the box? And
Mm.
it's like, no, he has every characteristic. Like, if you didn't think he was a serious head coach, I feel like this episode alone should put all of that to bed. No matter whatever else he says in a press conference, this episode by itself should put all of that to bed because he is all business all the time.
Yeah, that was another thing that struck me was when he was really just giving like the oral history of his resume and how he went from player to intern and then just climbed that ladder and then was the tight ends coach and then interim head coach. Didn't get the job, but then Sean Payton called and he's like, "Come on over to New Orleans. I'm going to teach you everything I know." And just goes back to what we've been saying from day one. Like he is far more than this meathead. And I mean, if you've got, because you'd have to imagine Sean Payton does not choose his proteges lightly. And
Yeah.
make no mistake, it really seems like Dan Campbell is a Sean Payton protege. Um, and it seems to be quite an honor. And I don't think Sean Payton would do that for just anyone. And so I think that Dan Campbell definitely has it, the with a capital I. And to that, another part that as you were talking that I really enjoyed was when they were talking with Calvin Shepard and how he said
Yeah.
he knew he kind of wanted to get in coaching and he was really going to cut his hair. And Dan Campbell said, "Don't you dare."
Yeah.
It was because I want Calvin Shepard. I don't want who Calvin Shepard thinks he has to be in order to get this job. I want Calvin Shepard. And that just for everyone. And that, and then I think Deuce Staley even said, Dan Campbell got this job because he's Dan Campbell.
Yes.
And not because of who some owner thinks a head coach should be or behave or sound like or present. He got it because he is who he is. And then that makes all of us coaches feel free to be who we are. And then they cut to that Jamal Williams interview about how so long as you're doing your job, yeah, you can be whoever you want.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I would say another part of this episode that really stood out to me has to be the Aiden Hutchinson Billie Jean sing along. Like, I'll admit it was a little disappointing because the hype that was built around it was that he was a good singer. Aiden Hutchinson is not a good singer
No,
at all. But
he went for it though. When it pops up, he did just he dove in, which is admirable.
Yeah, you can tell from the way he sung that song. Like that's a regular reoccurring song on Aiden Hutchinson's playlist. Like,
Yes.
like when he gets in the car, Billie Jean is probably like it's definitely in the playlist, but he committed and it was like these are the things that I think probably are what make Hard Knocks cool. Like you and I, this is our first season of ever watching Hard Knocks, but I think these are the things that probably make it really exciting and really entertaining is to see that camaraderie built up, right? Dan said as much as like this is what training camp is for. It's for building the brotherhood. And that's probably one of the more exciting things or more entertaining things to see is like Aiden Hutchinson is a rookie, right? And this could have just easily just been a rookie hazing moment where he just has to get up there and sing and the team laughs at him, or like not laughs at him, but laughs at like, like, oh, this is a funny moment. But like to see the team like buy in and start singing with him and like he's dancing and like the same with Malcolm Rodriguez, right? Like
Yeah.
they just go for it. And to your point earlier about it, I think it does kind of stem from Dan um wanting his players to be themselves and to feel comfortable in front of their teammates and around their coaches and to just be themselves at all times and not feel like they have to be something that they're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with that attitude is Dan Campbell's not going to make this team something that it's not. And I think that's one thing that has always impressed me about Dan Campbell as a coach is the way the philosophy finds its way into every aspect of the game. To the
Yeah.
game plan, the trick plays, the things he was doing against the Rams in order to just give us a chance against a much clearly superior team. He knew he was going to have to do whatever it took, and he did. And so that speech at the beginning, he talked about the majority of teams don't even go in the water,
Yeah.
and then there's the shallows, and
Yep.
there's a bunch of teams in the shallows, and teams will claw and to get deep, to get you behind them, and there's only about 4 teams in the deep end.
Yeah.
And it was just so great that he said into the abyss.
Yeah. I
and he said there's only about 4. And then that's our goal is to paddle out there and get drown the other teams. Uh so that just seems like the embodiment of so many things that they're working with, and I have to credit him with the singing with Rodriguez, with the camaraderie. Um, all of it is sort of encased within the sphere of his core philosophy of grit.
Mhm.
And it was great to see, there were moments where Calvin Shepard was doing his own thing with the linebackers, and he was saying it in his own way, but he was talking about grit. And then
Yeah.
Deuce Staley was talking with Swift or talking with someone, and he was saying it in his own way, but in essence, what he was talking about was grit. And I loved that moment of him going into the room. Um, what was it? What was the first one? Something Dreams Love. What was the first one?
Oh, crap. I do not remember what the first word was. I
It
know
was
the second was dreams and then last one was love. Oh man, I do not remember. It wasn't grit though, right?
I don't know. I think it might have been, yeah, I don't know if it was grit. But it was like, gosh, man, power or something. I don't know. Maybe not. I can't remember what it was. I shouldn't have brought it up if I couldn't have thought of all 3. Deuce would make me do up downs. Uh,
Oh, that was another cool moment from the episode too. Is like
yeah.
Dan doing the up downs. Like him, like Dan's reaction and Aiden's reaction to like, oh, we were doing those in a row. Like, and that's I kept like as I was watching it, I'm like, oh, they're gonna do 10. And then I was like, oh no, they're gonna do 20, 30, 40. Like,
Yeah.
what are you like? Up downs suck. Like they are
Mhm.
up downs alone made me want to quit football. Like that exercise, like that alone it is a punishment in football for a reason because it sucks. It is the worst thing to do in football, especially when you're in pads. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah. But another thing Scott and I touched on it last week was Deshaun Elliott's response about what age Aubrey Pleasant does with going back
Yeah.
to the fundamentals and my experience with my old teacher and how she let that inform every aspect of like the growth from there on out.
Yeah.
And I can really see why these players will just run through a wall for these coaches with going back to Deuce Staley, like saying talking about growing as men. And there's nothing wrong. You should absolutely be able to look to the man to your left and look to the man to your right and say, I love you. And like that's not weakness, that's strength. And then he immediately goes, Aaron Glenn, I love you. He's like, I'm going to fuck you up between the lines, but I love you. And, but yeah, and I think just that growth of like, it's just growing as people, as we talked about this whole mind, body, spirit connection.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure if any of the coaches would ever, phrase it like that. But it really seems like, again, they're using their own language, but it really seems like that's what they are driving home. And I think that really does come from Dan Campbell.
Yeah. And that's another really cool moment that stood out to me from that episode, is when Deuce gets in front of the team, because that's not a football moment. Not in the traditional sense, right? Like, so these guys talk about teaching these guys fundamentals, and they teach them about football, but in that moment, that is a life lesson, right? That is a lesson that, like, I can say from my experience, like, I didn't learn. Not that I didn't learn it, but like it became preached harder to me once I got into like my early 20s. Like the deconstruction of, I guess you could say, like the deconstruction of toxic masculinity, right? Of like being able to tell the man next to you or somebody that you're close to that you love them, because there's so many men that won't do that. So like the fact that they're not just teaching them football, but they're trying to, groom, young men, which some of these are not young men. Like some of these guys have kids and wives, but they're still taking the time to teach all of those life lessons, because even if there's, even if it's just 2% of the men in that room that have never learned that lesson, that's a lesson that they can really like, that transcends football. Yeah. And so that was a cool glimpse to see that, to at least get an understanding that like, yeah, this is more than football. And football as a sport is more than just the game that's played on Sunday. Like there is actual bonding and life lessons and relationships built through this that go beyond whatever the score at the end of a football game is.
Yes. Yeah. Which I think kind of in its own way ties back to how Dan Campbell framed the whole season.
Yeah.
Saying, get it out of your head that you're going to feel good. You're not going to feel good until next March. You will never feel as good as you do right now. And this whole idea of playing at 85%, because you will not be 100% until the season's over. And like you're a month after the season's over, you won't be 100%. And that's another thing that I guess I just never really thought about, but is 100% true. Because it's such a brutal game. I mean, they really highlighted that aspect of.
I was gonna say the hitting in this episode is just, again, incredible. Like, yeah, it's. I guess we can kind of wrap it with this, but like when the episode ended, I kind of sat there for a minute, and I'm just like, we still probably have like 4 or 5 episodes left, and they basically, like in the first episode basically covers the first 2 weeks of training camp. If I'm lining things up correctly, this is like the last 2 weeks of training camp that they basically covered in this one episode. And it's just like, I can't wait to see what else we have, which I guess in hindsight, there'll be preseason games and things like that for them to cover. And they still haven't even started doing the deep dives into the players themselves. So I can't wait for that either. Who knows if that's next week or any of the future episodes as well.
Yeah. Inside the Den, a new Inside the Den dropped today or yesterday as well.
Yeah.
And it was like a behind the scenes into Hard Knocks. And one thing that was very interesting, they interviewed the director of Hard Knocks, this woman who was saying that they basically deliver the final cut of the episode to HBO Saturday. And then it airs Tuesday night, and Liev Schreiber does the voiceovers Tuesday morning.
And you want to talk about dedication? Like, I thought I was doing something impressive with this podcast. Yeah. Like, editing it like the morning of, like, bro, what?
Yeah. So I think next week we very well may get to see, because I agree with you. It seems like we did hit the first 2 weeks, so I feel like we are going to get a little bit of the Atlanta Falcons. Maybe not a lot, because I do think they're going to start to, as you said, get into the personalities a little bit more. From what I understand, they do a great job of creating these stories of who's on the bubble, and
Yeah.
so I think I would like to see more of that, and then a little bit of the Falcons game. So yeah, I think. Oh, another thing that last thing I'll say about the episode that really stood out to me, not about the coaches, was when, as it was a play that made Twitter and made the rounds. I know we shared it in the chat. Was when Penei Sewell and Aiden Hutchinson going up against each other, and they kept showing
Yeah.
Penei Sewell getting the better of him. But what they didn't show on Twitter, what we saw in Hard Knocks, was Aiden Hutchinson had this little dip move and kind of got one over on Penei. And then they cut to Penei talking with, I think, Taylor Decker. Aiden Hutchinson was nowhere around. So they were just two guys commenting on this. And Penei said, man, he had that dip move. And
Yeah.
I had my arms on him and he did this dip. And boy, he was around me. And just as Lions fans, that should have us very excited. If Penei, being who he is, if Hutchinson is already figuring out by the end of 2 weeks in practice, here's how I have to move, here's how I have to dip, this is the speed, the power, that I need to have. So everything that we said got me excited for like the team and the organization and to see more. Penei's comment about Hutchinson made me excited for the player that Hutchinson can be.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm right there with you with that, because I think that was, again, it's another cool moment of showing, again, the growth of both of those guys. And I love how they highlighted the fact that, like, again, Peneza is last year's first round pick. So it's really two young guys that are really helping each other grow and improve. I also love seeing the TJ Hawkinson like crackback block. Like that was more emphatic than I thought it would be. And it was like, oh no, he really got him. Like I thought it was like kind of being overhyped a little. Like, nope, no, he got him.
Yeah, he put him down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're going to take a small break from the Lions really quick. We're still going to be talking some NFC North because obviously it's still relevant to the Lions. But there's trouble in Chicago.
Trouble in the Windy City.
Yeah, it's a little breezy over there, and it's courtesy of Roquan Smith, who has formally requested a trade from the team. And I can't think of another time in recent memory where an NFL player has made such a public, like, I want to get the heck up out of here. Like, other than Baker, but like Baker, like you kind of knew it was coming. Like this was a shock, and it was still very, very public of like, I don't want to be here. This team doesn't seem to respect me. And I was very shocked to see this news kind of come across the wire this morning.
Yeah, I've got. I'm going to read us I'm going to highlight the part of his statement that really stood out to me. This is Roquan Smith in his request to be traded. Quote: "Unfortunately, the new front office regime doesn't value me here. They've refused to negotiate in good faith. Every step of this journey has been take it or leave it. The deal they sent to me is one that would be bad for myself and for the entire linebacker market if I signed it. I've been trying to get something done that's fair since April, but their focus has been on trying to take advantage of me. I wanted to be a Bear for my entire career, help this team bring a Super Bowl back to our city. However, they have left me no choice than to request a trade that allows me to play for an organization that truly values what I bring to the table." That is pretty damning.
Yeah. So for a little bit of context on like how good of if you're not familiar with how good of a player Roquan Smith has been, last season he produced 163 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 interception, and 1 touchdown actually. In his 4 years in his career, he has never finished a season with less than 100 tackles. He has always topped 100 tackles. He has always gotten at least 2 sacks in every season that he's played. So the fact that this wasn't like an easy layup deal for the Bears is a little baffling to me.
Yes.
You know, Roquan Smith from my understanding, I don't believe he's had to deal with any serious injuries. Again, it's kind of hard to believe that he has with him putting up those kind of numbers. And if he has dealt with injuries and still put up those numbers, sign him. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, so that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up, is because we obviously play them twice a year in the same division.
Yeah.
And most projections had us splitting games with the Bears, going 1-1 against them. Now, do we think this is a Roquan Smith issue, or do we think this issue is systemic? My thinking is, if a player of Roquan Smith's caliber is getting this kind of treatment, then he's not the only one.
So when you say systemic, do you mean with the Bears specifically or across the NFL?
Oh, sorry, with the Bears as an organization.
Okay. Then yes, I think this is a Bears issue. I think the Bears are well aware that they're probably not as close as the Packers and the Vikings are. They either are viewing themselves in a similar situation as the Lions, or if they're being honest with themselves, probably a worse situation than the Lions. And when you're in those types of situations, the hardest thing to do is to pay young players big money for long contracts, because it becomes an issue of, are you going to be good while that player is eating up so much of your cap space? From what I was hearing about, like, some of the deals that Roquan was being offered, a lot of them were being backloaded. So again, trying to keep cost really, really affordable up front, but then, paying him later. But obviously, if anybody has been familiar with how the NFL works and how money easily gets moved around, there's always a possibility that Roquan wouldn't see that money in the first place. And to, like you mentioned in his comment, it also was just going to be bad for the linebacker market. So I believe this is a Bears issue where they're trying to mitigate costs because they would like to keep him, but they're trying to find like a way of making it affordable for them. But if you're worried about like not being good and not having so much of your cap space being eaten up, the best thing for you to do in this situation is to trade him, in all honesty.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't actually thought of that. If you are kind of committed to this idea of a rebuild, now I think, but then that goes back to my question of, like, how deep does this rot go? And is this affecting Justin Fields? Is this affecting, I really can't name any other Bears standouts. I mean, well, because they had the whole thing with David Montgomery, and that didn't seem to be like a, oh, well, my time here is ended, and so onward and upward. It did seem like it was a pretty bad breakup. But so that's my only curiosity, because I'd like to, how does this stuff tie in with the Lions? And I think it's very easy for us to say, oh, they're a dumpster fire, so then we'll be able to beat them. But as we just saw on Hard Knocks, these guys are professional competitors, and regardless of how they may or may not feel, obviously it plays a factor. But I think after seeing Deuce Staley and Aaron Glenn, like, once they put that helmet on and once they get in between the lines, that competitor comes out. And so I don't know. Because I want to say now we go 2-0 against the Bears.
I'll say it. I think the Bears. I think the Bears are terrible. First of all,
okay, great, love it.
I didn't think they were going to be very good, anyways. Right? I've read a couple things, just like a couple of training camp around the horn type stuff, and Bears are having trouble finding like whoever is going to be their number 2 wide receiver, dealing with injuries. Now you have the Roquan Smith situation. Their offensive line has been terrible. Justin Fields has been up and down. So I don't expect them to be very good. I kind of expect the Bears to finish last in the division, which again would be very good for them, because if like they're clearly in some form of rebuild. Now, I think what the Bears are finding themselves in a situation of is that, again, you're probably going to be bad, but you have a young player. This would be like if Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell came in last year and TJ was in the situation that he's in now, right? Where like you're kind of like, you have to work out an extension, but you're still trying to figure out like what pieces you need to rebuild this roster.
Gotcha.
And so I think that's why personally, I think the Bears will probably end up trading Roquan, because the benefit of having a middle linebacker probably isn't there for a team that where you're like, we still need wide receivers, we still need O-line help, we still need, I don't know what their secondary situation looks like. I know they recently lost guys on their defensive line. Like, you guys have holes everywhere. Can you afford to pay a middle linebacker? As good as Roquan Smith is, like, I would say that he's worth the money. But if you tie up all that money in your middle linebacker, then what happens? Like, how do you fill the other holes, essentially? With that said, though, wouldn't be opposed to the Lions throwing an offer out there. Doubt he gets traded here, but I would throw an offer out.
Yeah, Jeremy Reisman had a tweet about the Bears dealing Roquan Smith to a division rival, especially one that seems like on the up and up as the Lions, would be like an all-time GM bonehead move.
I mean, it might as well. If he's gonna, lowball him, might as well just go full bonehead.
Well, yeah. So okay. So what do you think? I mean, we've heard about linebackers just not being valued particularly highly in the modern NFL. So what do you think the Bears would be able to get for him?
I think a linebacker of Roquan Smith's only downside, if I remember correctly, is his height. Like, he's not a big linebacker. He's 6'1", right? So, he's not 6'3", so that kind of takes him out of certain situations. But again, when you have a guy that's produced like that, and it's not like he's played like behind the greatest defensive line. Again, the Bears did have Akeem Hicks. They did have Eddie Goldman, or I think they still have Eddie Goldman. They did have Akeem Hicks, but Roquan Smith was like every bit the caliber of linebacker that he was coming out of Georgia. Rangy, was able to be disruptive. A lot of the same things that was said about Nakobe Dean, except he was like 2 inches taller. So I think for someone like Roquan Smith, you could probably still at least get a second round pick. I don't think you're going to get a first. He's not Khalil Mack, right? He's not putting up ridiculous sack numbers, but he's a very good middle linebacker. And if you're a team that needs one, like the Lions, or a team that could use one that's, probably playoff bound, and you're just like, oh, we could use a linebacker to kind of bolster our defense. He's worth a second round pick. And if you're probably even a late first, if you're like going to be at the bottom of the first round, you could probably like afford to give that up to get Roquan.
Okay. Interesting. Now, do you see Brad Holmes putting in any kind of offer? Because I know there was a comment by Dan Campbell in a presser where he was talking about how we could use some more girth up front. And so a lot of people are speculating that we may see a late interior lineman signing, just for depth, not anything splashy, just continuing this trend that they've had on this offseason of, solid depth signings. So do you think someone like Roquan Smith could fill that role or no?
Not quite. I think, because I think when Dan's talked about girth, I think he's specifically looking at like defensive line. I think they're
like huge guys. Okay.
Yeah, someone to kind of fill the John Pennisini role. Someone to play behind Akeem or Aleem. But again, we've talked about it plenty of times on this podcast. Like, linebacker is a toss-up. And we'll kind of get into it a little bit later when we talk about the preseason game stuff. But like, linebacker is a group that there is no like sure thing. Like, there's no one that like I don't think like I think there's guys that we're excited about, but no one that you're just like, oh no, like this guy can start day one and I know he'll be lights out from day one. Roquan Smith is that. Like, that you would be able to plug him in and like, oh no, he's going to do X, Y, and Z really, really well. The only issue is, again, would the Bears trade him in division? And probably not. More than likely not. But to your first question, would Brad Holmes put in an offer? Brad Holmes is a really smart guy. I think he's smart enough to know that you at least got to make that phone call. But again, we've also heard Kelvin Shepard talk about this linebacker group, and he seems very excited about who he has.
It's true.
So it's also possible that, he brings it to the coaches and the coaches are just like, no, we'll pass. Whether that's the right decision to do, it's not what I would do. I would make the phone call and at least see what the asking price is.
Sure. Okay, enough about the Bears. Who cares?
Yeah,
but
let's
so let's talk about our team. And one thing that I've been keeping an eye on are the training camp injuries. Quintez Cephas, I know I talked about it last week.
Mm-hmm.
We may have overreacted. I have a tendency of doing that. But it definitely looked bad the day of. Thankfully, sigh of relief. It was not as bad as it appeared to be in the moment. Dan Campbell said he's progressing very well. He was actually out there today. He was jogging. He was jumping up and down, testing it. So usually that's a sign that he's going to be back within a matter of days, which is really great. Because I think, he's one of those guys that is definitely fighting for a spot. However, Levi Onwuzurike was not even at practice today and has not been since he went down a week ago. Last week, I talked about not being worried about Pascal because Kaminsky and Cornell were both playing well. And, they probably weren't both going to make the team, but one of those two guys, it was a bubble battle. And
sure,
it really seems like Cornell's running away with it. Pride of Detroit just did their bubble watch. And Jashon Cornell just got, the nine votes. He's pretty much a lock at this point. However, I did that whole segment thinking, Onwuzurike was a lock, and that because he got tangled up with Hawkinson, and Hawkinson was back out there in 3 days. But the fact that Onwuzurike still is not even on the field in pads with the team has me a little worried. I know Campbell said that the injury should not, quote, threaten any regular season time, but knowing, especially with what we just saw in Hard Knocks, that you need this time. The studies have shown, as Campbell even says in the episode, you need this time. It's reps. It's reps at speed, reps at contact. And I mean, to me, this just seems like another disaster waiting to happen in terms of he gets out there and then boom, gets injured game 2 or game 3. So I don't know. Do we think the shortened training camp is enough for him? Do we think he plays more snaps preseason to make up for it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I am worried, and it's only because it's a back injury. And again, I don't even play football, but like back injuries are tricky. Like they seem to be able to creep up and come back into play at any given moment, right? Like I said, I'm not playing contact sports. I'm not even playing high activity sports, but there are days where I go to the gym and there are some days where I can deadlift and there's other days I cannot because like one wrong move in my back just won't like allow me to do it. And it throws off my entire workout. So I can only imagine for a guy who had back issues all last year, was having a good camp, but if one wrong like twist or one wrong like pop of pads and he's just maybe doesn't have his pad level the right way or whatever the situation may be, like that can easily re-aggravate it. And so it's a little bit of a concern because again, the reason they said that Levi wasn't able to be as dynamic as they thought he would be was because of his back. So it's hard for me to believe that this isn't going to at least linger in some capacity. And so the question becomes like, is that also going to repeat itself in like his ability to have very limited impact because he, for whatever reason, his back issue just constantly springs up. So I'm worried in the sense of, again, Levi being able to take the big jump that we thought he was going to take. I think he will play, and I think that he'll probably play a good chunk of the season. I don't think he'll miss any. Like I'm in agreement with Dan on that I don't think he'll miss any extended time, but I don't know if his impact will be the exact same as compared to when we thought he would be completely healthy.
Yeah, that's smart. It's more of a middle ground of what I was thinking. I was kind of thinking I was catastrophizing. So of course thinking in extremes of like,
Yeah.
but I think,
Well,
yeah, playing, but just not having the impact. I think that's a more reasonable.
yeah, because again, like we're not hearing exactly what it is. Clearly he doesn't need surgery. And when Dan was talking about it today, it sounded like he kept using the word like adjustment. We just need to get him realigned. So it sounds like a lot of like chiropractor stuff. But again, like this is a guy who plays in the trenches and who, you know, has to go from a low stance directly into another human being and then also has to be concerned about possibly getting blocked from the side, getting undercut. So there's a lot of like shifting in that, you know, spinal area. I don't think it's something, it doesn't sound like it's anything that's career threatening, but it just sounds like something that could always be like a nagging concern for Levi.
Sure. Now to that injury and to Pascal and Williams, the NFL just announced recently, I think very within the last day or two, that they further tweaked the NFI pup list, and there is now a deadline. And players placed on the NFI pup or IR list before this deadline do not count against the 53-man roster. This is brand new this year. Before you had to kind of take these injured players, so now it really seems like there's extra incentive for Pascal to be 100% before he comes back. And so if these injuries do end up lingering,
Yeah.
we can put them on the NFI, the pup, and those spots will not count. We can take Cornell. We can take maybe if we sign someone else. I think that bodes a little better. And then, because that they will have to be out for 4 weeks, which it was shortened from 6, which again is good for the teams. So I think that's even more incentive to, like you said, with backs lingering. I mean, it's core. I mean, core back. It's all
right
in the same spot. So, so same with Pascal, with, as Campbell said, some version of a sports hernia. I think just waiting until they're 100%. As he said, you'll never feel 100%, but for all intents and purposes, these guys have not really had a training camp. So I think taking it slow, taking it smart with these guys, especially considering that they're not going to count against the 53-man roster, I think we're going to see a lot more kind of slow and steady wins the race here from not just the Lions, but from teams around the league.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an approach that they would be wise to take. I think with Levi, obviously with Josh Pascal, I think it would be a very smart, route to take. Obviously, they're going to have to take that route. It seems to be with Jameson as well. Cephas is the only one that like I wouldn't be surprised if Cephas is back like by like the second or third preseason game, just because of the way that Dan talked about it. But I also think Cephas is a lock to make this team. In all honesty, of like
that one-handed grab, man. Like I feel like every training camp, he's just the king of the one-handed grabs.
Well, and it was so I don't think it was this. Well, it definitely wasn't. I don't think maybe it was Inside the Den. This last episode of Inside the Den, where like Jared Goff is like talking to Cephas, and he's just like, "Dude, you're just stronger than him. Like, if you're stronger than him, just go through him." And
yes.
I was listening to you guys talk about this last week, and that was the thing that stood out to me is that while DJ Chark is obviously proving to be better at catching these contested catches and these possessions type of catches, I still think like Cephas is that guy though. And if he may not be necessarily a starter, but again, we're talking about depth and we're talking about like, okay, you have your starters and then you need replacements behind them. It's not crazy to think that like Cephas is DJ Chark's backup, right?
Yeah.
And that Jameson is Josh Reynolds until he's healthy. Like those are their backups. And then Khalif Raymond and St. Brown are your slot guys. Obviously, these guys are going to play all over the field. But if Cephas' injury lingers, then yeah, you have that buffer to be able to put him on, the pup list, give him a couple weeks. But I think he was a lock to make the roster anyways.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that moment up because that was, I thought the exact same thing of, that was definitely a moment of Jared saying, essentially be yourself. And he said,
Yeah.
because he even mentioned, he's like, don't run around him.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe he was trying to like run around people, and he's like, no, man. He's like, that's not who you are. You are stronger than them. Just beat them. Just
Yeah.
overpower them, and that's what he has got to do.
Yeah. And so
Um,
I think that's like I said it before, I think that's his best asset on the team. And while DJ Chark can do it probably really well and Amon-Ra can do it really well, I still think like pound for pound, Cephas probably has like strongest hands.
yeah. It certainly seems though Amon-Ra would take issue with that, and then would probably like do some sort of exercise for 3 days in a row just to get for
I
like
mean,
he wouldn't sleep. He wouldn't sleep. He would just do this one exercise and then just
hey,
until his hands were as strong.
hey, iron sharpens iron in that situation.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm all for
Yeah.
it.
But speaking of really quickly before we get to the preseason game
Yeah.
preview, I just have to bring up one thing that gets me so excited is DJ Chark. It really seems like from Jeff Risdon, Jeremy Reisman, a number of the people who are at camp are saying he absolutely took over in the last 3 days, and he has been, quote, unguardable. And we saw that in some highlights in Hard Knocks. There's a in the inside the den towards the very end. They show the game. They show some of the scrimmages at practice, and then they show the forward field. And my God, DJ Chark is just coming down with everything and making diving catches, getting yards after the catch. And I think there was one. I think it was on Inside the Den where Jared Goff's stat sheet, he was like 3 for 4 with like one touchdown and something. But then they're like, but there's a big asterisk there that those 3 passes were all for 20 plus yards.
Yeah.
And that's something that they're really focusing on this year, because now they have DJ Chark, they have Josh Reynolds, they have Jameson Williams waiting in the wings to take the top off the defense. And because now Amon-Ra St. Brown is now a certified threat in the middle, and Hawkinson as well, that man, and Chark is just, from all reports, absolutely stepping up to the task of being that guy. And it's got me very excited.
Well, to that point, because I'm glad you brought that up, because that brought me to another question. I saw it on Twitter, so I can't remember who said it originally, but it definitely rang true to me, or at least piqued my interest. At what point in time does Chark and the other wide receivers' success start to worry you about the play of the corners and safeties? Maybe not so much the safeties, but definitely the corners on this team.
You mean in terms of that, it just really seems like they're winning all the battles?
Yeah, like I don't know if you remember, like in like the like there used to be something like in the Looney Tunes cartoons where like it would just be like constant like a fight going on, and then like it would cut to like Bugs Bunny or whatever. He'd be like, kind of one-sided, isn't it? And it's just like or no, it's in Space Jam. It's in Space Jam where like the monsters are just like racking up the points, and it gets so high that it just stops, and it's like kind of one-sided, isn't it? Like that's how I'm starting to feel about like the Lions wide receivers, where it's like, geez, like the number of highlights that I've seen where DJ Chark is beating Amani Oruwariye is getting scary, where you're just like, Amani's supposed to be CB1.
Yeah.
And you don't seem to be winning many of these battles. Or at least we don't see you winning them.
Yes. So I think they did show one Will Harris pass breakup that had an extra effort, but again, one out of all the numerous accolades we're hearing about. The only thing I can say to that, because I hadn't thought about that, a lot of things I haven't thought about this episode, but the only thing that I can maybe say to that, to, as not a counter, as not a rebuttal, but like I do remember it was either Campbell or Ben Johnson talking about the drills that they were running, and Campbell said, just given the nature of the exercise, the exercise favors the offense. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that the highlights we're seeing and that the things we're hearing about are in these drills that do favor the offense, and that when you get onto like the 11 on 11s, that it's a little more even-handed.
Something that's scary about that though is the like rules in the NFL favor the offense as well. So it's like,
well, damn it.
right? Like that's like, but that's to your point. Like that's where things get a little like tight because it's just like you know. Granted, yeah, if the drills favor, if it's one-on-one type drills, then yeah, those do typically favor the offense. Absolutely. Um, but we'll see, and we'll actually get our first glimpse of that during the preseason game, which is what I am so excited for. Like, I don't think
It's
I've
back.
ever been. I don't think I've ever been this excited for a preseason game. Like these games don't
Yeah,
even
me neither.
count. Like I
Yeah.
don't even care if they win. I just want to watch football.
Yes.
I want to watch
Agreed.
football that I care about specifically. I want to watch football
Yeah.
because I did not watch that Raiders Jags game. Though, if Trayvon Walker keeps doing what he did in that game, we may owe him a serious apology.
Oh, okay. I didn't watch it.
I didn't watch it, but there were some highlights and there was some stuff said like he was pretty physically dominant.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that may be something that we may have to watch out for as something that we may have to backtrack a little.
Especially when we play them later this year.
Yes. But no, yeah. So first preseason game is happening this Friday. The Lions will be playing the Atlanta Falcons. Gionne, how are you feeling?
I feel great. I'm where you're at. I'm so excited, and as I said before the show, believe it or not, I'm sobering up because, and that has nothing to do with me losing faith or me not thinking the Lions are as good as they're gonna, or me not believing the hype. This is simply a matter of, as I've said in our text chat, in our texts, as I've said on the show, it's up to this point, up until Friday at 3 p.m. It's all abstract. The Lions, as like their talent, their abilities, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as we as fans are concerned, it exists in the abstract. It only exists in our imagination. We have tweets of people who are there, but we're not seeing, just as we were just talking about, we're not seeing the cornerback play. We're just hearing these things. So we actually get data. We actually get snaps. We actually get, boots on the ground, like plays to evaluate. This isn't this.
Yeah.
It's not abstract anymore, and that's, I think, what I'm the most excited about.
No, and I am too, because to that point, I was starting to become a little numb to like all the emotional stuff because that's what we've been getting a lot. Part of it is because of Hard Knocks. Part of it is just because, again, the nature of, and I'm not like bashing the Lions like PR team or their video team. Like they're putting out really good content that obviously is meant to drum up excitement for the team. And I love it. Like it's good to watch. I'm not sitting here watching it like, oh, this is crap. But it doesn't do anything for me anymore. I have filled my plate with like the emotional investment that I'm going to do. I don't need any more emotional investment. I need data. I need to see skill on skill, players against players. In the words of Aaron Glenn, I need to see one man whoop another man. Like that's what I need to see at this point. And so I was becoming a little numb to the emotional stuff. And it's just like, the Jamal video came out this week and last week. And it's not that I hated it. I was just like, oh, this is cool. When can I see Jamal run over somebody though? Like I want to see that. I want to see, can Jamal break tackles? Is Jamal looking more explosive? Like I want to see that in the context of a game. And while preseason games don't matter in the grand scheme of things, like they don't add an extra win or loss to your overall record. Nobody's going to the Super Bowl strictly off of your preseason record. Like you said, it's the first time we get actual data. We can finally evaluate these players in some context with our own eyes, with our own uneducated football eyes, and at least be able to say that guy looks good, that guy looks terrible, that guy could actually be a star, right? Like we can start making those early assumptions based off of things we're actually seeing.
Yeah, Miko's been at the cocktail hour of reception before at a wedding, and he's like, "When's dinner?" Like this
Yeah.
is great. This is fine, but when's dinner?
Like,
I'm
oh, these
hungry.
finger sandwiches are amazing. I love that you put so much effort into this. Where's the fish I ordered?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So to that, so what are you looking for now that you're like, this player looks good, this player, could be something, this player's probably not making the team. What are you looking for? Who do you got eyes on?
Yeah, so for me, it's the linebackers. Flat out, like, I'm going to obviously watch the entire game, and I do want to see like first string offense look explosive, but I'm going to watch the entire preseason game, which most people don't do. Most people don't even watch preseason games at all, but I'm going to watch them because this linebacker group is such a mystery. I want to see who starts the game. I want to see how they perform. And I just want to see, like, again, as they're rotating guys out, like who's popping, who's really showing and separating themselves from the group, because there are so many guys, right? You have Alex Anzalone, you have Derek Barnes, Malcolm Rodriguez, Jared Davis, Chris Board, what is it, Alexander
Sean
Pittman,
Dion Hamilton,
Sean Dion Hamilton,
Anthony Pittman,
Anthony Pittman. Yeah, like there's a group of guys, and they've all been talked about in some context of like, oh, they're kind of turning heads, they're kind of doing this. These guys are running with the ones. Oh, now these guys are running with the ones. I want to see, like, what are we actually dealing with, or is this just a complete cluster of guys that it's just like, oh, this is going to be a band-aid thing all season. And then after that, it's Jeff Okudah, right? Does he play, and how much does he play? This will be the first time, if he does play, this will be the first time we've seen him since, week 1 last year. And I'm so curious on how much playing time they give him, because technically him and Will Harris are battling it out for CB2, or at least that's what, some of the reporters have said. So does Will Harris get the start and Jeff play a lot just to kind of get him acclimated, or is it vice versa? So I'm also going to be really locked into that.
Yeah, Okudah's an interesting case because he's one, when Campbell's asked about him, he keeps saying he needs reps. He said, he's technically in his 3rd year, but he's essentially in his 2nd. And he just needs reps. So his snap count is going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. I agree with that. Linebackers, yeah, it's going to be very interesting for me, though, knowing that, starters, and Campbell said starters are going to play about probably a quarter. He said he called the Falcons coach, and it seems like they kind of agree on that. So we are going to get at least kind of 1 quarter, probably. That said, I've got my eye on the back, on the backup running backs, Craig Reynolds, Jamar Jefferson.
Okay.
I think our running back duo of Swift and Williams, as we said, is very happy with it. I think it's the best running back duo we've had in a very long time here. And as loyal listeners of the show know, I'm a huge fan of Craig Reynolds. So I'm looking to see if Craig Reynolds and Jamar Jefferson pop against the 2nd string.
Yeah.
Because Craig Reynolds popped against Arizona Cardinals 1st string last season. And so if he maintains that trajectory, then I think, and he just becomes unstoppable, and for a couple, and then they seat him and then they bench him and put in Jamar, then okay, awesome. Love to see it. And then we may get to see Justin Jackson, the new signing.
Who
knows? 2 other guys, because we're only going to see him a quarter. We're going to see the starters for only probably 1 quarter. I'm looking to see how Chase Lucas and Malcolm Rodriguez. So Malcolm Rodriguez, the linebacker, obviously, as you pointed out, that's going to be very interesting. Is his size going to be that big of a factor? How, are they going to give him 1st team reps, 2nd team, whatever? But it really seems like Chase Lucas has come up in these last 3 days in the same way that DJ Chark has. Chase Lucas was 6th round pick, or 7th round. Geez. But it really seems like he's really become mentally more focused, and he's been picking up the mental aspect of the game, and that has absolutely just fed into how he's been performing. So I'm going to keep an eye on Chase Lucas. and our running backs and my guy Jashawn Cornell.
I find it interesting that neither of us said the offense or Aiden Hutchinson. And I think it's probably just by nature, like that, like we're going to obviously look at those guys. At least I know for me, like the offense isn't going to be a huge focus only because I know like the offense that we see in the preseason is not the same offense that we're going to see week one against
Right.
the Eagles. It's just not.
Right.
There'll probably be like shades of it here and there, but everybody always says, right, that the playbook gets tweaked because you're putting stuff on film, so you don't want to risk putting like your actual week one playbook on film to where like a team has a very good idea of what you're going to be running, just based off a preseason tape alone.
Yeah. To that, so maybe not strategy or plays or systems. One thing that I'm definitely going to be looking out for is this culture of grit. And if it truly is top to bottom, the way that they've been instilling it, are these second and third string, fourth string guys, these bubble players, going to go that extra mile the way they did the second half of last season? I have no doubt that they will, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see if we do see our second, or I guess at that point, third and fourth stringers playing in the second half of the game. If we do see them start to pull ahead, I think to me that's going to indicate that we're really onto something in terms of this culture, and that it's not just, leadership guys like Jared Goff, Penei Sewell, Jamal Williams, who are internalizing this stuff and kind of, leading the rest of the team. If I see the entire team, treading water until they bury the other team, as Campbell said in that presser, then it's like, okay, then every single player, top to bottom, has internalized this culture and is on the same page. And I think that's going to be very powerful. And that's only going to mean whoever ends up making the team has that mindset and is that much more talented than those people.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I guess in a way, like I would say the same thing in the sense of like, again, like who's going to be this year's Craig Reynolds, right? Like Craig came onto the scene like a little bit in the preseason, and we were just kind of like, oh, like that guy should make the roster, and he didn't, and then it was just like, oh, okay, but then he was like on the team later, so I'm also going to be kind of keeping an eye out for that. Is like, who is the guy that just pops, right? Like kind of like you're saying, like buys in, shows some grit, shows some toughness, shows some flashes, and maybe like again that you can kind of look at like, oh, that guy's gonna push this person probably out of a spot. That's gonna be super interesting. And then back to the point I made about Aiden, I do want to see him like flash, right? Like I said, heard some really good things about Trayvon Walker in his first game. Got a sack, got a roughing the passer call on him. But apparently like even on that play though, it was just like, oh God, he flashed, like just physical dominance.
Oh,
so
really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you kind of want to see the same thing from Aiden a little bit in a couple spots. You at least want to see him flash. He doesn't have to stuff. Again, it's the preseason. I'm not looking for you to stuff the stat sheet, but flash one or two times. It was at least be like, oh, okay, he's there. And then after that, like, dude, just get out healthy. Like, get as many of these guys out of that game as healthy as possible. I almost want the offense to just like get some early scores just so Dan can be like, all right, go sit down. Everybody out.
Yeah. Well, another thing that if they come out and get a bunch and they run up the score early, then I think that might be able to assuage some of our issues with our in terms of the secondary, because then it would indicate to me that the offense is in fact just that good.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I think then I guess tack that onto the sheet of things I'm going to be looking out for, because you had said funny, no one said the offense or Aiden Hutchinson, and I think because like on paper, I mean our offense should be really good, But now that I think about it, if they do in that first quarter, if they show out, Jared Goff looks crisp, DJ Chark is unguardable, Amon-Ra's slicing and dicing up the middle, then it's like, okay, then our cornerbacks, then it's an iron sharpens iron situation. Then it's like, okay, well then the offense is just that good.
Well, into that same case, you know, when you're looking at the defensive side, like they're going against a nice offense as well. I mean, quarterback play is mid, but they're going against Kyle Pitts, Drake London. I'm actually kind of excited to see Drake London. Just because I'm curious. So like Drake London was a guy that I wanted for the Lions. And so I'm super curious to see like how he dude. I'm gonna watch a couple preseason games because there's a couple guys that I've heard rumblings like that they're having good off seasons or good training camps, and it's like I gotta check that game out.
Like who?
Drake London, George Pickens, wide receiver that went to the Steelers. Apparently,
flattened that U of M.
Yeah, apparently he's already been like slotted in as like starting wide receiver. Apparently, like I read something today where he went against a corner in one-on-ones, got him for a touchdown, did the gritty on him. The guy like, no, run it back. He did it again, scored another touchdown, did the same celebration all over again. And it's just like, dude.
Oh my God.
That was a guy that I would have been perfectly happy with prior to Jamison Williams. I want to be specifically clear. Prior to us finding out that we were going to get Jamison Williams, I was beating the George Pickens drum. And then obviously,
you had me sold on that. I after you said that, I checked out some highlights, and man, the game against U of M where he flattened that dude and then shushed the sideline, shushed the U of M side, just turned. He was right there, right at the sideline, just shushed him.
dude has got swagger for days. So, and then Kayvon, like I want to see. Mm-hmm. I've heard Kayvon's been, you know, solid. The Giants do a horrible job of covering their team.
Like I went to their subreddit. Their subreddit's abysmal compared to the Lions.
It is really bad. Like we have it so like this is what it means to live in a sports city and have a city that really cares about football and cares about sports. I mean, I know New York typically goes crazy for like the Knicks and stuff, but like they seem to not care about their football teams. So
correct.
But no, man, that was pretty much everything we had on the docket.
Yeah. One quick thing that I wanted to add, and the Inside the Den that I shared, just in case our listeners didn't know, there was one thing that really stood out to me. Antoine Randall is featured very heavily, very, very prominently in that episode of Inside the Den. And what stood out to me is Jamison Williams is attached to his hip.
Yeah.
There is only maybe one shot of Randall without Jamison Williams standing right next to him, just tossing a ball in his hands back and forth, just leaning over, whispering to him, asking him questions, pointing to the play sheet. And I mean, it's obviously what you want to see, but it feels good, man, that, you know, to know that a guy of Jamison Williams' caliber has that mental, mature, I guess is maybe the word, or like takes that side of it as seriously as the physical side of it is just so fun.
I'm still amazed that he's there every day. Right. Like I don't take that for granted. And again, I don't know if he has to be, like, I don't know if it's like mandatory that like, even though he's injured, he has to be, but like, I mean, we get updates on practice all the time, and like certain guys that have been out just aren't there. Right. Romeo's not there all the time. Josh Pascal isn't there right now. So it's very interesting to me that like Jamison chooses. I'm assuming that he is choosing to get up every day they have practice, get there on time, and then basically be like, no, I'm going to stand here throughout all of practice. Like, yeah. And it's so yeah, I don't think that's something that fans should overlook. It was really cool to see because we've heard it so much, you know, in the offseason that he's there, that he has a ball in his hands. You saw it in Hard Knocks a couple times where I'm like, it was almost like a Where's Waldo thing where it's like, oh, there's Jamison again, standing on the sideline with a football. But
Yeah.
no, dude, I'm so excited for him this season. I think like that's the one player once the season kicks off that I'm going to be so excited for. I've never bought a Lions jersey. Jameson Williams is already on my list of like Lions jerseys that I want to own.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. And like especially given his behavior at training camp, to think, because it just seems like, and I think this goes to the team that Brad Holmes and Sheila, I think we need to really include Sheila, because Sheila hired these guys. And so
Yeah.
I think we really need to always include, I really thought of this week, we really need to start including Sheila whenever we talk about these, as much as.
Oh yeah, that's gonna take fans a while to get used to, but yes, you have to start giving your own credit.
Yeah. And so it just goes to the team that these people are building, in that the same guy, because usually the guy who goes up in front of the media and says, yeah, if I were to do the 40, I would have had the fastest time. Oh, you mean at the combine? No, I mean ever. Usually that guy is not the guy getting up early, going to practices that he doesn't have to be at, and like chirp,
he could be
like
rehabbing
constantly. Yes. Yeah. Like that. Just the fact that those two guys are the same guy is so incredible.
And like, again, he is such a humble kid. Like he other than like if you ask him a question like straight up about his ability, like he's very confident in his abilities, but he doesn't come across as a braggadocious guy. And again, who knows what if that changes once he actually gets in the league and if he starts lighting it up. Like obviously, like everybody starts feeling himself after that. But so far, like great kid, like somebody that I will be rooting for, and I hope that again, sooner than later, like I want him on the field sooner than later, and I want him to just help take this team to new heights.
Agreed. Hard agree.
All right, Gio. Well, yeah, no, it's been a good show. We forgot to mention in the beginning, obviously Scotty's not here. He's actually in transit. So like we kind of basically swapped places. He's now on vacation for a little bit. But he'll be back next week. He's not taking nearly as long of a vacation as I am. Unless he decides to, which again, we've talked about this plenty of times. You guys don't understand how hard Scotty works behind the scenes.
Oh my God.
It is insane. But that's pretty much going to do it for this week's show. Got to give a shout out to you, Gionne and Scotty. You guys did an awesome job while I was out. Always, like never worried, never concerned about what you guys are going to be able to put together. But a huge shout out to my wife, my kids. Double shout out to my wife, because again, the vacation I took, like my wife planned all of that out. So she's I am so lucky to have her in so many ways. But thank you to all of our followers or subscribers. We appreciate you guys. Be sure to like this video, comment on this video, share it with some other people. Let us know what you thought of Hard Knocks. Like, let us know what your favorite moment was. Who do you think was the star? Let us know what you think is going to happen next week on Hard Knocks. Give us your predictions for the preseason game. Like, just put whatever you want in the comments. Let
us hear it.
That's appropriate. Yeah. And that's not going to make me remove your comment.
Right.
Gionne, what you got?
So first and foremost, I want to thank my wife. And I had some family staying. My mom came in because the baby shower was this weekend. And so I want to thank my mom, my aunt, and my mother-in-law. Oddly enough, it was crazy. Like, you know, when I was in my 20s and 30s, like my only experience with in-laws was like pop culture and just like the whole, you know, awful that it's like this should be a contentious relationship. And man, like I really hit the jackpot. And the fact that, you know, my mom and my aunt can stay with me and my wife in, you know, not a very large dwelling for 4 straight days and with 0 issues. And then Rachel's mom comes over to have dinner with us. She comes over early and we all 5 of us just, you know, effortless conversation for the entire time. There's no drama. There's no blow-ups. There's no like gossiping behind anyone's back. It's just, I'm just very, very, very grateful for the family situation I have right now. So And my cat is very grateful that my mom and aunt are gone, because they were staying in what is pretty much her room, which is the
Oh
room I'm
no.
in right now. But yeah, so she's very grateful that this loud people are gone. So, but yeah, that's what I got. And yeah, thanks, Scott, for all the hard work he does, and for making deals that should do well for us in this channel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's gonna do it for us. This is the Questionable Podcast. Out.